a couple of the sort of themes that were in there that were bringing up some of my own issues, especially the one about the having grown up in a world of sexuality over here and spirituality over here with two polarities. I'd say that mirrors my journey from sort of far ends of spirituality, sort of non-dual awareness, ridiculously long vipassanas and plant dietas and etc. etc. Lots of shamanic practice. I found myself quite disembodied. Noticed that I began this sort of journey back really into embodiment, and that's when I came across conscious sexuality. I practiced tantra for a long time within my relationships, but still had them in separate boxes. Coming through the training, I did the first retreat with Joy. I mean, we did this for the first time, and I got a lot out of that personally, and then went to train with Ista. Just my last year really has been taken up with that, doing my level 1 and my level 2, and integrating how that procedure was. Yeah, I'm relaxed today. I'm having a long day off work. I'm really feeling the pleasure of not having to do anything. And it's really nice to be in this sharing circle. One of my favorite things is when people's, when we've got our souls out. It's nice. Pleased to be here.
In some ways, it feels like I've been on this journey since I was born. But yeah, I guess I was introduced to sacred sexuality in 2013, but I didn't really do anything about it. And then I got involved in ISTA 2015, and then again didn't do anything for a while. And then in 2018, I just went full in, I don't know how many ISTAs now, and another one, the Haydn Temple Training. Don't know if you know either of these schools, but yeah, they work with sexuality and shamanism and spirituality. And yeah, it's since I first discovered it, really, it just felt like, 1, this is what I need, and 2, this is what the world needs. And I definitely came from a place, again, I suppose I had a Christian background, but not very strict. Like, my parents weren't really into it, but I think you just absorb so much from the culture. And my grandparents were very devout Christians. Yeah, I kind of had this sense of being very broken. I felt like my sexuality was broken, and this was quite a deep thing for me for many years. But it wasn't just, and then it's not just about sexuality. It's like, discovering that how things are in your sexuality is connected to how things are in everything. And sexuality is kind of a magnifier for it. But as you sort of start to pick apart all the things, what makes me feel like this or like that as regards to sexuality, and then it just opens up into a whole world of how that relates to everything in my life. So yeah, and it feels like it's been a big journey. Some core wounds to go through around loneliness and worthlessness and brokenness. Yeah, and now it just feels like I couldn't do anything else. Like this work is really what lights me up, and I'm still working through stuff. There's always stuff. And I think anyone who says they don't have stuff anymore is probably in denial. Yeah, I don't know if that gives you a good picture or not, but now
yeah, Primal Innocence, I think, was a sense I had. think maybe in of Joy's work when when I first met her, when I was watching her work for a little while, and I think it was your naked ecstatic dance that you put on. We did we did the first one of those, which is a clothing optional ecstatic dance evening, and I was very quickly taken back with it. But by the time everyone had their clothes off and we were dancing, there was a real sort of playful, joyful, innocent atmosphere in the room, and I was taken very strongly back to being age 5 or 6 and dancing on the grass in the summer under the sprinkler with my sister and her friends. And I remember this before we knew that being naked was a thing. It was just obvious what you did when the sun was out and it's water. And I can remember the primal joy of that. Specifically, remember turning around and seeing rainbows dancing in the sprinkler, and suddenly having my first realization that everything was magic. I was like, oh, there's magic everywhere. And this sense of primal innocence is something that runs through the energy of the way that we hold the container. Here it feels very quickly like we're in a family. It's just family. It's just us, and we're playing, and it's safe to do that. The sort of the framework that we use, I think, establishes that very quickly.
Yeah, it's always this, we've corrupted sexuality to be something that's dirty and to be something that's not innocent. And it's like really wanting to take it back to, these bodies that we inhabit and what they can do and how they move through the world is something very beautiful and very innocent, actually, and very sacred. And it's like, how do we bring innocence back to our bodies, to our sexuality, to our emotions? And they're not here to undermine us and to pull us away from whatever sacredness or tempt us. It's like once you can actually understand them and embrace them, they're our greatest allies. And actually, it's the suppression of them that causes all the problems.
Yes.
The process of the retreat, those are the things that we're looking at. Like what barriers are there within us, or what is there? What areas of resistance or unintegrated parts of ourselves are standing in the way of being in that state of innocence, but with the full power of of our erotic energy working in that same space at the same time. It's seemingly, as we were saying, these seeming opposite polarities, and I think that the essence of what we're doing into the retreat is, as those barriers come out, we find ourselves naturally going into a sort of state of non-dual awareness, where you're holding those two polarities in the same place. So yes.
Yeah, and in a way, we're slowing everything right down and picking it apart. Like there's so much that we conflate with sexuality. It's like so much gets wrapped up in it, of like relationships, worthiness, whether you're loved, like your idea of success. Like there's so much that can be wrapped up in what is sexuality, and like trying to pick apart piece by piece. Okay, that bit's not sexuality, that's something else. That bit's not that, like, and then trying to like what actually is underneath all that when we take the burden off of all of this pressure we put on it about how it should be or how we need it to be or making it be a certain way. How does it actually move itself? And it's something that happens on a much deeper level, and it's a mystery, and that's the exciting part. It's the way it moves is deeply mysterious and deeply magnificent. Yeah. Or if it's when I look at things on a practical level, it's like, yeah, it's going into this unaltered state of consciousness, which equals another realm. That can be interchangeable. Like we're in an altered state of consciousness, and then the willingness to really go to those places people struggle to go to, because I think that's where you get the messages. because people who, they're all in nice places, people like to go there, so they've already got those messages. But to actually go to the more challenging places, like picking up a stone and actually looking at the creepy crawly things there and being fascinated by them, and then understanding how the whole like ecosystem, like the composting, and that it's kind of the part that, like, there's so much learning and so much richness there, and it's really just looking at the reality of our own existence, I think. That's what's coming to me at the moment. But you've got a lot more to say about shamanism. You've been on plant medicine.
Yes, it's a rabbit hole I've gone a long way down. I think, yeah, the essence, I think you were really both just expressing there really quite clearly of the end sort of point of shamanic practice is to dissolve the division between us and the planet, everything around us, and ultimately the universe, until it becomes, until you actually realize that you're part of that. And I think the way that we work shamanically in the space is that it's my belief that once you've traveled to those particular places in your own life and in your own spirit, then if you're holding space, in that you kind of place one foot firmly in all the places that you've been. You kind of distill it down to essence of all the workshops I've ever done, all of the stuff that I've ever experienced, and then you kind of go to that place and you keep one foot there and the other foot firmly in this world, and then something magical happens when we do that together in a group. So, you know, when I'm with somebody else who's in exactly the same state, when I'm working with Joy and the other people who are part of our team that we work with, that a thing called the field activates around that, and the container kind of magically in my mind, sort of, you know, as this thing comes into place, a lovely sort of magical shield comes over the whole thing, and it goes la, and we enter a safe space where, you know, where transformational magic can occur, and suddenly everything becomes synchronistic and shamanic.
I like to call, like, one way I like, my scientific brain likes this analogy, like if each person is a pixel on a screen and then you look at the picture on the screen, that's like the field that forms around a group that get together with intentionality. Yeah.
And the bit I love about this is sort of, you know, when it happens, everything suddenly seems magnified, and everything that happens becomes significant. Suddenly the conversations that you're having with people over dinner, and the, you know, what happens when you go out for a wee, and the way you pass a particular tree, and you suddenly think the meaning seems to come clearer. And I think that's our intention, is to hold, when we kind of put our energy together, I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I feel like sexuality is the perfect tool for like shadow work or shamanic work, because that's where all our, like, not where all of our shadow, but so much of our shadow is in our sexuality, that as soon as you put a spotlight on it, you get all sorts of creepy crawly things going everywhere.
And yeah, it's my background was with plant medicine for a long time. We went really right, very much kind of to the end of that road almost. I remember attending one of my first events with Joy, thinking, yeah, it's okay, you know, but somebody needs to serve some real medicine here if anything proper is going to happen. And then I think she led us into a fairly simple exercise. It felt quite simple, and she said, yeah, I can do that. And then 10 minutes later, I was on the floor, sobbing, and with my heart wrenched wide open in the only way that I'd ever done in plant medicine ceremonies. And, you know, when I was just coming into contact with the divine, and I suddenly realized that you can approach Eros as medicine. So it's like you can come to it the same way that you set intention around and coming to any serious teacher substance, an entheogen, something that's capable of taking you into the presence of the divine.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to use sexuality for this, because everyone has experience of sexuality, but not everyone has experience of it as medicine. And you can come all the way from being going to play parties all the way through to the, you know, those temples that come together so perfectly that you really feel like you're like this portal to complete divinity, and there's like this whole spectrum in between. And I think that's, you know, why I feel to slow everything down, and to like, we don't go as far as penetration in this retreat. It's non-penetrative, but we are using sexual energy, we are using touch, and it's like coming layer by layer and step by step, and you start to realize that there's such an infinite universe here to be explored.
And I think that is quite radical for a lot of us. I know for me anyway, the idea of coming to sexual energy for anything apart from sort of pleasure was, you know, that's what it sort of was. It was in this tiny little box of genital activity that was friction based, led to a build up of or release of tension, leading to orgasm. And if I was lucky, a cuddles, you know, a brief period where my heart felt really open and I felt one with the other person. You know, that was kind of it for me. The idea that eros can be so much more, and that sexual energy can flow in the directions that it does have been a real revelation to me. So hopefully that's kind of what we're doing, is really learning through the retreat, really practical, slowed right down tools on how do you approach eros as medicine, and how do you then be receptive to the lessons that you get? How can you listen to it? How do you hear it? Why is it good to find the difficult bits? For example, you know, what shadow hunting as a principle is quite a it's not immediately obvious why you'd want to. You know, it's sort of like, I don't know if anyone else has got plant medicine experience, but you know, I often find that the medicine ceremonies where I have a challenging night are the most healing. They're the ones where I'm being shown parts of myself that I'm perhaps hiding from, or not comfortable with, or still in total denial of. And yeah, coming to eros as medicine for that purpose is interesting. Coming to eros without telling it what to do. I think that would be the peak thing I've begun to understand over the last year. How in my relationship with it all my life, my mind has directed my eros. So I've tried to use it as as a servant to my mind. Basically, it's like my mind thinks I would like this, so therefore my eros needs to. I'm going to move it in this direction. I'm going to seek this. I'm going to have a goal orientation of it being going in this particular direction. And this journey for me has been about reversing that process, listening and putting my body in the driving seat, and really learning to listen to that. What does it actually want? And I think, the tools that we go through in the retreat are really helpful.
The people who've come to our retreat so far that have got a lot of plant medicine experience seem to really get a lot out of it. It's been our observation. Like they already have that understanding.
It helps.
And
What Michael said, that having learned a pathway to somewhere really helps.
But yeah, if you all can be your own shamans as well.
And that really is part of the thing behind the course, isn't it? I think the journey of sexual shamanism it's like a process of part of sort of a soul retrieval, and really the goal of it is to give you your own power back. Like, here you go, have all the tools.
Yeah, we're not healing you. We're giving you a journey where you can learn how to do it.
And the really good thing about the sort of organization that we've done a lot of training with ISTA, over sort of 10, 15 years, they've kind of distilled some really good gems of necessary steps in the process, and things that really help, practical things that really help, that you can pass on quite quickly.
Yeah, it's a really important point, and a really like that I find so important in all of this work. I mean, like we're working with sexual energy. Like it's not like boundaries are of course the first thing we teach, and the most important thing. It's like if is this the question about where does eros actually want to flow when we take off all of our expectations of it, and it's really important that you only go as far as you want to go. And if your system is telling you I need this right now, then you need that right now. And this is kind of really one of the most important points that I believe in doing this work. There should never be any pressure at all, because nobody knows what journey you're meant to be on right now. And yeah, and maybe saying no and keeping your own boundaries is actually the most healing thing that you can do for yourself, and could completely change someone's life, that they actually said no to something. And yeah, I really believe in that. We work a lot with emotions on the course, and this state of being down, or a state, whatever state you would rather not be in. There's, you know, the tools to what do you do when you're in that state, and it's never about getting rid of it. It's about how to be with it. And it's really yeah, when it comes to working with that, maybe your eros is taking you now to that state. Maybe it has some medicine for you there. And I find it, you know, a lot comes up when working with eros, like all of, like, lots of things you're ashamed of, lots of things that you would rather avoid, and we really are encouraging and celebrating any expression that wants to come. And it's really not about having a good time, and you might have a good time, which is great, but also you might not, and that's also fine.
I think my first experiences with big temple spaces, that everything comes up. I've had evenings sat in the corner of a temple feeling very left out, and all sorts of, you know, all sorts of things coming up for me. And those evenings, that's what eros wanted to bring for me. You know, it's a really, I needed to go through that experience. And I think for a lot of people, it's yeah, we come up very quickly against our conditioning of this tiny little cage that we placed eros into, this thing that happens with our genitals, and it's way more. It's like everything. It's everything, and often it's quite common for you, well, for me anyway, for my genitals not to be activated at all during time in temple spaces. Sometimes they do.
There's a really nice quote by Yasmin. She one of the ISTA facilitators, but I remember her saying on one of her podcasts that, like, people come to ISTA with this feeling of they're going to have these amazing sexual experiences, and then they spend most of their time crying. But it's alive, and it's real, and it's authentic, and it's connecting. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all about releasing eros from its little prison that somehow it got placed in.